he was good to go, and Eliana lit 2 fires in it because she lit one in the morning and then one in the evening, and so that'll keep us warm in the cold. So for new fireplaces, new chimney liners, we say Modim Anachnu La. For all these gifts, we thank you, we sing your praises, and we say Amen. The news has been just full of high-stakes stories this week. Just recently, the US and the UK, I think amongst others, attacked the Houthi rebels in Yemen and expanded perhaps the war in the Middle East. We had the end of arguments in Donald Trump's fraud trial. A number of NFL coaches have left their jobs, including my own Patriots' Bill Belichick. I don't know him personally, but still. And yet the story that has grabbed my attention the most is one about Jews and tunnels. Jews and tunnels. And part of the reason it has grabbed my attention, and part of the absurdity of the story, is that I'm not even talking about Israel, but about Brooklyn. So let me explain this complicated story as best I can, in case you haven't been following along. If you've been following along, then we're going to rehash a little bit, but I'll do my best, even though there are so many question marks still out there that I might have some of these details wrong, but I'll do my best to summarize. Now it starts, we could take a history lesson and go all the way back to the 18th century when the Baal Shem Tov founded the Hasidic movement, a movement of joyous fervor and mysticism and spirituality mixed with what we now call ultra-Orthodoxy. And one branch of that Hasidic movement, the Chabad Lubavitch movement, which was founded in 1775 by Rabbi Shneur Zalman Liadi. Now, we all know Chabad, right? They're the guys who stand on the corner and ask you if you're a guy, if you're Jewish, and they're the ones with the sukkah mobiles, and they're the ones who have the Hanukkah menorot on display. And we might have good relationships with them. We might have poor relationships with them. For me, it depends on the rabbi. There's the one in Ben Gurion Airport who put me in a headlock when I refused to lay tefillin. But then there's my local rabbi back home who drops off the matzah at my parents' house. And even though he probably doesn't see Reform rabbis as rabbis, he always asks, how's the rabbi, right? That denominational difference doesn't matter. There was also the Chabad on campus where I walked in my first time on Simchat Torah, and he says, have you made a l'chaim yet? And I said, no, and he handed me a shot of vodka. Not yet 21, but he did not care, and neither did I. And there were 7 Rebbes of the Chabad movement. The last, Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson, is known as the Rebbe, and he died in 1994 with no heir. That's important to the story, as is their headquarters, famously located at 770 Eastern Parkway in Crown Heights, Brooklyn, but known just as 770. So that all came to a head this week with two complicated issues at play. The first is that there's a dispute between the main Chabad headquarters and a synagogue right next door. There's a dispute between the main Chabad heads and these Gabaim, the people who run the synagogue, as to who's in control and what happens with the shared space, including a shared kind of basement, is my understanding. And there's lots of lawsuits as to who can build what and when, and it's all kind of stuck. The second is that there's a subsect of Chabad who believe, these people believe that Rabbi Schneerson, the Rebbe, is the Messiah. You might see little yellow pins with flags and a crown that says Moshiach. You see signs. There's a sign that says that he lives in 770, even though he died 30 years ago. They think that he will come back, or some of them think he already is back. Now, this subsect is publicly and officially disavowed, but they're still kind of tolerated within the Chabad ranks. And so that came to a head this week with these secret tunnels, really one secret tunnel from the synagogue to the main headquarters, possibly as a way of fulfilling the Rebbe's dream of expanding the synagogue, or the building. They think if they expand it like he wanted, then he'll come back and they'll build the third temple and everything will be honky-dory. And then, of course, they tried to fill it in with cement, and they didn't like that, those 20-something yeshiva guys, so they tried to stop them, and the police came, and you should look it up. Great videos online. That's all background to say that this is a fascinating and absurd and unbelievable story. And I've been asking myself, why am I so intrigued by this? Every time it comes in my email, I need to read about it. Not in the way I've read about any of those other headlines, except maybe Bill Belichick. And why is it so intriguing? Part of it comes from this idea that many liberal Jews have of Orthodox or ultra-Orthodox Jews are authentic. They're the real ones, right? If you close your eyes and think of a Jew, you might think of a man with a black hat and a beard, and there's this view that, oh, they're the real ones. That's why we watched Unorthodox, or what's that, Steisel, or all of these shows, right? I didn't watch that one yet, but all of these shows. There's also my issues. I'm fascinated because I have such difficulty with Chabad. Not only the headlock, I got in an argument with the same college rabbi who said that you can't believe in evolution as a Jew. It doesn't work with Torah, he says. I disagreed with that. But I think ultimately why this story fascinates me is the chutzpah. There's such chutzpah that these young men had. They think they're so right. They think that they're so sure that their rabbi, who died 30 years ago, they're so sure he's the Messiah that they're going to build a tunnel and ruin a synagogue. They pulled panels off the walls, and they damaged this place so that he could return. And they were so sure of that. And in so many ways, it reminds me of Pharaoh. As we see this week, Va'era, Pharaoh is also stubborn. He also has chutzpah. In the portion, God, via Moses, brings plague after plague after plague to Pharaoh. We get the first 7 of the 10 plagues. We see God's might over and over and over again. The blood and the frogs and the flies and the cattle disease and on. He has this proof. Pharaoh can see it, and yet it says over and over again something like this, which we read in chapter 8, verse 28 of Exodus. Vayachbed paro et libo, but Pharaoh became stubborn. His heart hardened this time also, and he would not let the people go. Pharaoh is stubborn. He sees the miracles, he sees the plagues, and he knows that God is more powerful than his magicians, but he refuses to let the Israelites go. He cannot consider for one moment that he might be wrong. Chutzpah, just like the tunnelers. And in this way, not only is Pharaoh like the tunnelers, but also like the anti-Semites that have arisen in light of this story, because that's another part of the story. They see these tunnels and they claim they're Zionist tunnels. They claim that Jews use them for nefarious purposes, which I won't name. There are people on Twitter, X, whatever it's called, who have racked up millions of views on things saying that the tunnel is basically the blood libel. They're dredging up that old claim. Just like Pharaoh, the anti-Semites can't conceive that maybe, just maybe, their view is wrong. And then we contrast this all with Moses. Moses, whom our tradition aptly attributes as extremely humble. Unlike Pharaoh, unlike the tunnelers, and definitely unlike the anti-Semites of the world today, Moses seems to approach the world with an open mind. He asks God questions. He says, why? Why me? How? How is this going to work? He sets aside his ego. He questions the world and the way it works. He does not assume he's right. It's easy to say we're Moses and not Pharaoh, but the truth is sometimes it takes work. It takes work to question our own beliefs and assumptions. There's effort to say, I might be wrong, or even I am wrong. But when we do this, we can be like Moses. So I hope that we, in our approach to the world, in our questions, can be like Moses. May we be open-minded. May we ask why and how and am I right? And in this way, may we be so unlike Pharaoh, avoiding stubbornness and wickedness. And may we not dig under any tunnels under BJC. Shabbat Shalom. take a few moments to reflect on these words.